Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent afternoons at the mall or talking about boys, she could be found at her grandfather's ranch, learning to shoot tin cans off fence posts with his old hunting rifle. Her steady hands and sharp eyes made her a natural marksman, but nobody in Millfield, Texas, population 3,200, could have imagined where that talent would take her. The summer she turned 18, Sarah made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her. Instead of accepting the scholarship to study nursing at the local community college, she walked into the Army recruitment office and signed up to serve her country. Her parents, Maria and Carlos Martinez, were heartbroken. They had immigrated from Mexico when Sarah was just 2 years old, working double shifts at the local factory to give their daughter a better life than they had known. "Mija, why do you want to go to war?" her mother cried, holding Sarah's enlistment papers with shaking hands. "We came to America so you could have peace, not fight battles." Sarah tried to explain the fire that burned inside her chest, the feeling that she was meant for something bigger than their quiet town could offer. She had watched news coverage of conflicts overseas and felt a pull she couldn't ignore. When she saw female soldiers serving alongside men, protecting civilians and fighting for freedom, she knew that was her calling. Her grandfather, Roberto, understood better than anyone. He had served in Vietnam and recognized the determined look in Sarah's eyes. "Some people are born to be warriors," he told her parents. "You cannot cage an eagle and expect it to be happy as a canary." Basic training at Fort Benning was the hardest thing Sarah had ever done. The drill sergeants pushed every recruit to their limits, but they seemed especially tough on the women. Sarah's bunkmate, Jessica, quit after 3 weeks, crying as she packed her bags and headed home to Ohio. "I thought I was strong," Jessica said, her voice breaking. "But this isn't what I expected." Sarah almost quit too. The physical demands were brutal, the mental pressure constant, and the homesickness nearly unbearable. During the worst moments, when her body screamed in pain during long runs, or when the drill sergeant screamed at her face during equipment inspections, she would close her eyes and remember the feeling of hitting a perfect bullseye back home. But she pushed through, finishing basic training in the top 10% of her class. Her marksmanship scores were exceptional, catching the attention of Sergeant First Class Williams, a gruff man with 20 years of experience who rarely gave compliments. Martinez, he called her aside after a particularly challenging shooting exercise. "You've got something special. Ever think about sniper school?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had heard whispers about sniper school from other soldiers. It was elite training, the kind that turned good soldiers into legends. The best of the best competed for those slots, and very few made it through the grueling program. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like that, Sergeant," Sarah replied honestly. Williams studied her with sharp blue eyes. "Ready isn't something you are, Martinez. It's something you become. The question is whether you want it bad enough to do whatever it takes." That night, Sarah called home from the payphone outside the barracks. Her grandfather's voice was warm and encouraging as always. "Abuelo, they want to recommend me for sniper school," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And what do you want, Nieta?" he asked. Sarah looked up at the stars, thinking about the little girl who used to practice shooting until her fingers were numb from the cold. "I want to be the best. I want to make a difference." "Then you have your answer," Roberto said. "But remember, the mountain doesn't care how badly you want to climb it. You must prove yourself worthy of the summit." The application process for sniper school was intense. Sarah had to pass psychological evaluations, advanced physical fitness tests, and demonstrate exceptional shooting skills under various conditions. She spent every free moment at the firing range, perfecting her technique and building the mental discipline required for precision shooting. Other soldiers began to notice her dedication. Some were supportive, cheering her on during training exercises. Others were skeptical, making comments about whether a woman could handle the pressure of being a sniper. Sarah used both the encouragement and the doubt as fuel for her determination. "You think you're better than us because you can shoot straight?" Private Johnson taunted one evening in a mess hall. "Sniper school isn't about shooting paper targets, sweetheart. It's about taking human lives." Sarah set down her fork and looked Johnson in the eye. "I understand what being a sniper means," she said calmly. "The question is whether you understand what it means to protect the people who can't protect themselves." Her platoon leader, Lieutenant Peterson, pulled her aside the next day. "Martinez, I've been watching you. You've got the skills and the determination for sniper school, but there's something else you need to understand. This isn't just about being a good shot. Snipers operate alone or in very small teams, often behind enemy lines. The mental pressure is unlike anything you've experienced. Sarah nodded, appreciating his honesty. Sir, I know it won't be easy, but I believe this is what I'm meant to do. Peterson smiled slightly. I believe you might be right. I'm going to recommend you for the program. Don't make me regret it. The weeks leading up to her departure for sniper school were filled with intense preparation. Sarah studied everything she could find about long-range shooting, wind calculation, camouflage techniques, and military tactics. She pushed her physical training even harder, knowing that sniper school would test every aspect of her abilities. Her fellow soldiers began to see her differently. Even Johnson, who had initially mocked her ambitions, started showing grudging respect for her dedication. During a particularly challenging field exercise, he offered to carry some of her equipment when he noticed her struggling with a weight. Thanks, Sarah said, surprised by the gesture. You've proven you belong here, Johnson replied. I hope you prove you belong there too. The night before leaving for sniper school, Sarah sat alone in the barracks, writing letters to her family. To her parents, she tried to explain why this opportunity meant so much to her. To her grandfather, she expressed her gratitude for teaching her to shoot and for understanding her dreams when no one else did. I'm scared, she wrote to Roberto, but I'm also more excited than I've ever been. This feels like the beginning of something important, like all those afternoons practicing on the ranch were preparing me for this moment. As she sealed the letters, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a small town in Texas to an army base in Georgia, from a young girl shooting tin cans to a soldier preparing for elite training. She knew that sniper school would be the greatest challenge of her life, but she also knew that she was ready to face it. The next morning, Sarah boarded the transport that would take her to Fort Benning's sniper training facility. As the truck pulled away from the barracks, she watched her fellow soldiers waving goodbye. Some looked envious. Others looked relieved that they didn't have to face what awaited her. Sarah felt a mixture of emotions as familiar buildings disappeared behind them. Fear, excitement, determination, and hope all swirled together in her chest. She thought about her parents, probably praying for her safety at that very moment. She thought about her grandfather, who will be proud no matter what happened. And she thought about the little girl who had dreamed of being something special, something more than what anyone expected. The transport truck rumbled down the highway toward an uncertain future. Sarah Martinez was about to discover whether her dreams were strong enough to survive the reality of sniper school. In her backpack, alongside her military gear, she carried a small photo of her grandfather's ranch and a tin can with a bullet hole through the center, reminders of where she came from and why she was determined to succeed. As the miles passed beneath the truck's wheels, Sarah closed her eyes and visualized hitting perfect shots, one after another. She had no way of knowing that this journey would lead to heartbreak and disappointment before ultimately taking her to heights she never imagined possible. For now, she was simply a young woman chasing a dream, armed with exceptional skill and unshakable determination. The truck rounded a bend in the road, and Sarah caught her first glimpse of the sniper school facility in the distance. Her heart pounded with anticipation as she prepared to face the most challenging experience of her life. Whatever happened next, she was ready to give everything she had to prove that she belonged among the elite marksmen of the United States Army. The United States Army Sniper School at Fort Benning was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The facility sprawled across hundreds of acres of Georgia wilderness, with specialized ranges that stretched for miles into dense forest. Modern buildings housed classrooms filled with the latest ballistic computers and weather monitoring equipment, while rustic field training areas simulated combat conditions from around the world. Sarah arrived with 19 other soldiers, all handpicked from their units for exceptional marksmanship and mental toughness. She was one of only 2 women in the class, along with Specialist Rebecca Chun from California. The men eyed both women with mixtures of curiosity and skepticism, wondering if they could handle the legendary difficulty of the 8-week program. Their instructor was Master Sergeant David Hayes, a man whose reputation preceded him throughout the Army. Hayes had served 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan, with confirmed kills that numbered in the double digits. His weathered face showed the strain of years spent in combat zones, and his intense gray eyes seemed to see everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Hayes announced to the assembled class on their first morning, "Welcome to hell. Over the next 8 weeks, we will strip away everything you think you know about shooting and rebuild you as precision weapons. 60% of you will not complete this course. Some will quit, some will be dismissed for poor performance, and some will simply break under the pressure." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she maintained her composure. She had expected this to be difficult, but Hayes made it sound almost impossible. The first week focused on advanced marksmanship theory. Sarah excelled in the classroom portions, quickly grasping complex calculations for wind drift, bullet drop, and atmospheric pressure effects. Her mathematics background from high school served her well as she learned to factor in variables that could affect a bullet's trajectory over extreme distances. Specialist Chun struggled with the academic work, often staying up late into the night studying ballistic tables and meteorological data. Sarah offered to help, recognizing that they were both fighting to prove that women could succeed in this elite program. "Thanks," Rebecca said gratefully as Sarah explained a particularly difficult wind calculation formula. "I'm good shooting, but all this math is killing me." "We have to stick together," Sarah replied. "They're waiting for us to fail." The physical training was more intense than anything Sarah had experienced. Every morning began with a 5-mile run in full gear, followed by combat fitness tests that pushed their bodies to the limit. Afternoons were spent practicing fieldcraft, learning to move silently through terrain, construct natural camouflage, and remain motionless for hours at a time. During one particularly challenging exercise, the class had to low crawl 300 yards across an open field without being detected by observers with binoculars. The Georgia's sun beat down mercilessly as Sarah inched forward on her belly, her rifle cradled in her arms, and sweat pouring into her eyes. Private Rodriguez, crawling next to her, whispered, "I don't know how much more of this I can take." "Don't quit," Sarah whispered back through gritted teeth. "We've come too far to give up now." But Rodriguez didn't make it through the week. He was dropped from the program after failing to qualify on the 600-yard range, joining 3 other soldiers who had already washed out. Sarah watched them pack their gear with a mixture of sympathy and determination, knowing that their departure meant the standards were as unforgiving as Hayes had promised. The shooting exercises gradually increased in difficulty and complexity. What started as precise shots at known distances evolved into challenging scenarios with unknown ranges, moving targets, and time pressure. Sarah's natural talent continued to serve her well, but she noticed that pure marksmanship skill wasn't enough. The mental game was just as important as physical ability. Master Sergeant Hayes seemed to take particular interest in pushing Sarah and Rebecca harder than the men. During one shooting exercise, he stood directly behind Sarah as she prepared to engage a target at 800 yards. "Martinez," he said in a low voice that only she could hear, "your boyfriend back home is probably sleeping with your best friend right now. Your parents think you're wasting your time playing soldier. And every man in this class is hoping you'll quit so they don't have to worry about being shown up by a girl." Sarah felt anger surge through her body, but she forced herself to breathe slowly and focus on her target. She had learned that Hayes was testing her mental discipline, trying to see if external pressure could break her concentration. She adjusted for the crosswind, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger slowly. The shot hit dead center in the target's bullseye. "Good," Hayes said simply, then moved on to torment the next student. Rebecca wasn't as fortunate. The constant pressure and psychological warfare began to take its toll on her confidence. Her shooting scores, which had been solid in the early weeks, started to decline as stress affected her performance. Sarah tried to encourage her friend, but could see the doubt growing in Rebecca's eyes. "I don't think I'm cut out for this," Rebecca confided during a rare break between exercises. "Every time I look through the scope, I hear Hayes' voice telling me I'm not good enough." "You are good enough," Sarah insisted. "Don't let him get in your head. That's exactly what he wants." But Rebecca's performance continued to deteriorate. During the 5th week, she failed to qualify on a critical shooting test and was dismissed from the program. Sarah watched her friend pack her bags with tears in her eyes, feeling suddenly alone among the remaining soldiers. "Take care of yourself," Rebecca said as she prepared to leave. "Show them that we belong here." Sarah was now the only woman left in a class that had shrunk from 20 students to 11. The pressure on her intensified as everyone waited to see if she would become the next casualty. Some of her classmates were supportive, but Others seemed to view her continued presence as an insult to their own abilities. The sixth week brought night shooting exercises and urban warfare scenarios. Sarah found herself adapting well to the challenging conditions, using techniques her grandfather had taught her about reading wind patterns and adjusting for low-light visibility. Her scores remained consistently high, earning grudging respect from her fellow students. During a particularly difficult urban exercise, Sarah and her shooting partner, Corporal Williams from Tennessee, had to identify and engage multiple targets in a simulated city environment. The scenario required split-second decision-making to distinguish between hostile combatants and innocent civilians. Target left, second floor window, Williams whispered into his radio as they moved through the mock town. Sarah acquired the target through her scope, a terrorist figure partially concealed behind a curtain. She had to factor in the angle of her shot, the distance through glass, and the possibility of overpenetration that could endanger civilians in the building. Her training kicked in as she made the complex calculations in seconds. The shot was perfect, eliminating the threat without collateral damage. "Outstanding work, Martinez," came Hayes' voice over the radio. "That's textbook precision under pressure." For the first time since arriving at sniper school, Sarah felt truly confident that she could complete the program. Her shooting was consistently excellent. Her fieldcraft was improving daily, and her mental toughness had been proven under the most challenging conditions. But the seventh week brought an unexpected disaster. The final major exercise was a comprehensive test that combined everything they had learned. Students had to infiltrate a simulated enemy position, gather intelligence, engage multiple targets at various ranges, and extract without being detected. Sarah had prepared extensively for this test, knowing it would largely determine her final standing in the class. The mission began well. Sarah successfully moved through 3 miles of hostile terrain, reaching her designated observation post without being spotted by the role-playing opposing force. She gathered the required intelligence and prepared to engage her first target, a hostile sniper positioned 1,200 yards away. As she settled into her shooting position, Sarah felt completely calm and focused. The wind was steady, her calculations were precise, and her sight picture was perfect. She controlled her breathing, took up the slack in her trigger, and prepared to fire. But something went wrong. The shot missed by inches, striking the dirt beside the target rather than center mass. Sarah was stunned. She had never missed a shot that badly under these conditions. Quickly, she reloaded and attempted to engage a second target, but again her shot missed wide. Panic began to creep into her mind as she realized something was seriously wrong. Her rifle had been zeroed perfectly the day before, and the weather conditions were well within normal parameters. She tried to steady her breathing and focus, but doubt was poisoning her concentration. By the end of the exercise, Sarah had failed to hit any of her assigned targets. Her normally excellent marksmanship had completely abandoned her at the worst possible moment. As she walked back to the debriefing area, she felt numb with disbelief. Master Sergeant Hayes pulled her aside after the other students had been dismissed. "What happened out there, Martinez?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual harsh edge. "I don't know, Sergeant," Sarah replied honestly. "My rifle was zeroed. My calculations were correct, but nothing connected." Hayes examined her rifle carefully, checking the scope mounts and barrel. After several minutes of inspection, he found the problem. One of the scope mounting screws had worked loose during the exercise, causing her point of impact to shift dramatically. "Equipment failure," he announced. "It happens in combat too." Sarah felt a moment of relief, knowing that the missed shots weren't due to her own inadequacy. But Hayes' next words crushed her hopes. "However," he continued, "part of being a sniper is checking your equipment constantly and identifying problems before they affect your mission. You should have caught this during your pre-mission inspection." Sarah knew he was right. She had been so focused on the mental aspects of the test that she had rushed through her equipment check. It was a mistake that would have cost lives in a real combat situation. "I'm sorry, Sergeant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Hayes studied her for a long moment before delivering the verdict that would shatter her dreams. "Martinez, you're being dropped from the program. Pack your gear and report to the administrative office in the morning." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. After 7 weeks of the most challenging training of her life, after proving herself against every obstacle and overcoming every challenge, she was being sent home because of one critical mistake. That night, Sarah sat alone in her barracks room, staring at the phone she needed to use to call her family. How could she explain that she had come so close to achieving her dream, only to lose it all in the final moments? How could she face the disappointment in her parents' voices or the questions from her grandfather about what went wrong? She thought about Rebecca, who had been crushed by the mental pressure and sent home weeks earlier. She thought about all the soldiers who had washed out before her, each carrying their own story of failure and disappointment. Now she was joining their ranks, another casualty of the unforgiving standards that separated the elite from the merely good. The hardest part was knowing that she had the ability to succeed. Her shooting skills were among the best in the class. Her mental toughness had been proven repeatedly, and her dedication was unquestioned. But in the unforgiving world of military precision, one mistake was enough to end everything. As Sarah finally picked up the phone to call home, she wondered if she would ever get another chance to prove herself. The dream that had sustained her through months of training was over, and she had no idea what would come next. The phone call home was the hardest conversation Sarah had ever had. Her mother cried openly when Sarah explained that she had been dropped from sniper school, while her father remained silent on the other end of the line. But it was her grandfather's reaction that hurt the most. "What will you do now, Nieta?" Roberto asked, his voice heavy with concern. "I don't know, Abuelo," Sarah admitted, fighting back tears. "I feel like I failed everyone, especially you. All those hours you spent teaching me to shoot, and I couldn't even complete the program." "Listen to me carefully," her grandfather said firmly. "One setback does not define a warrior. The question is not whether you have fallen, but whether you will choose to rise again." Those words stayed with Sarah during the long journey back to her regular unit at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. She had been assigned to a standard infantry company, far from the elite world of snipers she had briefly touched. The transition was jarring, going from the intensity and purpose of sniper school back to routine garrison duties and basic training exercises. Her new company commander, Captain Morrison, called her into his office on her first day back. "I've reviewed your file, Martinez," he said, looking through her paperwork. "Impressive scores at sniper school until the final exercise." "What happened?" Sarah explained the equipment failure and her own oversight in checking her gear properly. Morrison listened without judgment, nodding occasionally as she described the events that led to her dismissal. "Equipment failures happen," Morrison said when she finished. "But you're right that a sniper has to catch those problems before they matter. Still, your shooting scores were exceptional. That kind of talent doesn't disappear overnight." Sarah appreciated his understanding, but she struggled to find motivation in her new assignment. After experiencing the elite training and high standards of sniper school, regular infantry duties felt mundane and pointless. She went through the motions during training exercises, but her heart wasn't in it. Her fellow soldiers noticed her lack of enthusiasm. Some tried to encourage her, while others seemed to enjoy seeing someone who had aimed so high brought back down to their level. "So much for being a Special Forces wannabe," Private Jackson commented during one morning formation. "Guess you're just regular Army like the rest of us." Sarah ignored the taunts, but they stung more than she wanted to admit. She had gotten used to being seen as exceptional, as someone destined for greatness. Now she felt like just another face in the crowd, carrying the weight of her failure like a heavy backpack. The months passed slowly. Sarah performed her duties competently, but without passion, earning average evaluations from her squad leaders. During weapons training, she still outshot nearly everyone in her company, but the achievement fell hollow compared to what she had almost accomplished. One evening, while cleaning her rifle in the armory, she was approached by Sergeant First Class Martinez, no relation, despite the shared name. He was an older soldier with 22 years of experience and a reputation for straight talk. "You know, Martinez," he said, sitting down across from her, "I've seen a lot of soldiers come and go over the years. Some peak early and fade away, others take time to find their path. The ones who succeed are usually the ones who learn from their failures instead of being defeated by them." Sarah looked up from her weapon. "What's your point, Sergeant?" "My point is that you're wasting your talent feeling sorry for yourself. So you got kicked out of sniper school. Big deal. That doesn't mean your journey as a marksman is over. There are other paths to excellence." That conversation planted a seed in Sarah's mind, but it would take months to grow into action. She continued her routine duties, but began spending her free time researching civilian shooting competitions and alternative military specialties that valued precision marksmanship. The turning point came 8 months after her return from sniper school. Sarah's unit was participating in a joint training exercise with National Guard units from several states. The exercise included a marksmanship competition between companies, and Sarah's shooting skills earned her a spot on her unit's team. The competition was held at a range that extended to 1,000 yards, longer than most of the participants had ever shot. Sarah felt a familiar excitement as she studied the course of fire and began calculating wind effects and bullet trajectories. For the first time since leaving sniper school, she felt truly engaged with her shooting. The competition was fierce, with some excellent marksmen from units across the region. But Sarah's training and natural ability shone through as she consistently hit targets that other shooters struggled to even see clearly. By the end of the day, she had won the individual competition by a significant margin. Word of her victory spread quickly through the participating units. Several officers approached her with questions about her background and training, clearly impressed by her performance. Among them was Colonel Patricia Williams, a National Guard officer who commanded a Special Operations Support Unit. "Martinez, I saw your shooting today," Williams said after the award ceremony. "That was some of the best long-range marksmanship I've witnessed outside of Special Operations units. What's your background?" Sarah explained her sniper school experience and subsequent assignment to regular infantry. Williams listened with growing interest, asking detailed questions about her training and the circumstances of her dismissal. "Have you considered the National Guard?" Williams asked. "We have some unique opportunities that might be a better fit for your skills than regular Army units." Sarah was intrigued, but cautious. She had been disappointed before and wasn't eager to set herself up for another failure. Williams gave her a business card and invited her to visit their unit to learn more about their mission and opportunities. That visit changed everything. Williams's unit supported Special Operations Forces with specialized capabilities including precision shooting, reconnaissance, and technical intelligence gathering. They operated with more flexibility than regular Army units and placed a premium on individual excellence rather than standardization. "We need shooters who can think independently and adapt to complex situations," Williams explained during Sarah's visit. "Your sniper school experience, even though it was incomplete, demonstrates exactly the kind of training and mindset we value." The unit had a position available for a designated marksman, essentially a sniper role without the official title. The job would involve providing precision fire support for special operations teams and participating in high-value target missions. It was everything Sarah had wanted from her military career. But there was a catch. To qualify for the position, Sarah would need to complete a specialized training course and demonstrate her abilities in a comprehensive evaluation. While not as lengthy as sniper school, the training would be just as demanding and the standards just as unforgiving. Sarah wrestled with the decision for weeks. Part of her was excited about the opportunity to return to precision shooting and elite operations. But another part feared facing another devastating failure if she couldn't meet the standards. She called her grandfather to discuss the opportunity, as she did whenever facing major decisions. "I'm scared, abuelo," she admitted. "What if I fail again? What if I'm just not good enough for this kind of work?" Roberto was quiet for a moment before responding. "Nieta, fear is not the enemy of courage. Fear is the sign that what you are considering matters to you. The only true failure would be not trying because you were afraid. But what if the same thing happens? What if I make another stupid mistake at the wrong time? Then you will learn from it and become better," Roberto said simply. "The rifle that misfires teaches the shooter to check his ammunition. The missed shot teaches him to read the wind more carefully. Failure is only permanent if you let it be." His words gave Sarah the courage she needed to accept Williams's offer. She submitted her transfer request and began preparing for another round of elite training, determined to prove that her sniper school failure was not the end of her story, but simply a chapter in a larger journey. The day her transfer was approved, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that reminded her of preparing for sniper school years earlier. But this time, she carried with her the hard-earned wisdom that comes from experiencing failure and choosing to try again. As she packed her gear for the move to Williams's unit, Sarah included the same tin can with the bullet hole that she had carried to sniper school. But now it meant something different to her. It wasn't just a reminder of her early promise as a shooter, but a symbol of resilience and the willingness to continue pursuing excellence despite setbacks. The night before leaving Fort Campbell, Sarah stood on the rifle range where she had spent countless hours practicing. The targets seemed to mock her with their perfectly round bullseyes, reminding her of all the shots she had made and the ones she had missed at the worst possible moment. But for the first time since returning from sniper school, Sarah felt truly optimistic about her future. She had learned that talent alone wasn't enough to guarantee success, and that setbacks were opportunities to build mental toughness rather than reasons to quit. Most importantly, she had discovered that her dreams were stronger than her fears. As she walked back to her barracks to get some sleep before the journey ahead, Sarah thought about the conversation with her grandfather and the lesson she was still learning. Sometimes the path to your destination isn't straight, and sometimes you have to fall down before you can learn to stand taller than ever before. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter in her journey as a marksman and a soldier. This time, she would be ready for whatever challenges awaited her, armed not just with exceptional shooting skills, but with the unshakable knowledge that she could overcome failure and continue pursuing excellence no matter how many times she was knocked down. The National Guard's Special Operations Support Unit was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her military career. Located at a facility in Colorado that looked more like a high-tech research campus than a traditional military base, the unit operated with a level of sophistication and flexibility that impressed her from day one. Colonel Williams introduced Sarah to her new teammates during her first week. The unit was small, consisting of only 45 specialists drawn from various military backgrounds. Some were former Special Forces operators, others were technical experts in fields like communications and intelligence analysis. What they all shared was a commitment to excellence and the ability to work independently in high-stress situations. Sarah's immediate supervisor was Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, a former Marine Scout sniper who had served 4 combat tours before joining the National Guard. Rodriguez had an impressive reputation as both a marksman and a leader, and Sarah was eager to learn from her experience. "I've read your file," Rodriguez said during their first meeting. "Sniper school dropout, but with some impressive shooting scores. What happened there?" Sarah explained the equipment failure and her oversight during the final exercise. Rodriguez listened without judgment, nodding occasionally as she absorbed the details. "Equipment failures are part of the job," Rodriguez said when Sarah finished. "But so is attention to detail. The question now is whether you've learned from that mistake and can avoid repeating it." The specialized training Sarah needed to complete was different from sniper school in important ways. Rather than focusing solely on long-range shooting, the program emphasized versatility and adaptability. Sarah learned to engage targets at various distances using different weapon systems, from precision rifles to crew-serve weapons. The mental training was just as important as the technical skills. Sarah worked with sports psychologists and performance specialists to develop better focus and emotional control under pressure. They taught her visualization techniques, breathing exercises, and methods for managing stress that went far beyond what she had learned in sniper school. "The difference between good shooters and great ones isn't just skill," explained Dr. Sarah Kim, the unit's performance psychologist. "It's the ability to perform consistently under pressure and recover quickly from setbacks. Your sniper school experience actually gives you an advantage here because you know what failure feels like and you've chosen to continue anyway." Sarah found this perspective refreshing. Rather than viewing her sniper school dismissal as a weakness, Dr. Kim helped her see it as valuable experience that had built her mental resilience. This reframing allowed Sarah to approach her training with confidence rather than the defensive anxiety she had carried for months. The physical demands of the program were intense, but manageable for someone with Sarah's fitness level. She excelled at the fieldcraft portions, learning advanced camouflage techniques and movement skills that would allow her to operate undetected in hostile territory. Her experience from sniper school gave her a solid foundation, but she was surprised by how much more there was to learn. During one training exercise, Sarah and her partner, Specialist James Liu, had to infiltrate a simulated enemy compound and gather intelligence without being detected. The scenario required them to move through open terrain in broad daylight, using only natural concealment and careful timing to avoid the roving patrols. "This is impossible," Liu whispered as they studied the target area from their observation post. "There's no way to get close enough without being seen." Sarah studied the compound through her binoculars, noting the patrol patterns and looking for weaknesses in the security. After 20 minutes of observation, she identified a narrow window of opportunity. "There," She pointed to a drainage ditch that ran along one side of the compound. "We can use that ditch to get within 50 meters of the building. The patrol only passes that area every 15 minutes. The infiltration was successful, earning praise from their instructors and building Sarah's confidence in her tactical abilities. She was learning that being an effective precision shooter required much more than just marksmanship skills. The shooting portions of the training pushed Sarah to new levels of accuracy and consistency. Rather than focusing on single perfect shots, the emphasis was on sustained precision under varying conditions. Sarah learned to engage multiple targets rapidly, adjust for changing weather conditions, and maintain accuracy while fatigued or under stress. Her progress impressed the instructors, but Sarah remained focused on the lessons she had learned from her previous failure. She developed obsessive equipment checking habits, spending extra time verifying that her rifle was properly zeroed and all components were secure before every exercise. "You're being too careful," Rodriguez observed after watching Sarah conduct her pre-shooting inspection for the third time. Attention to detail is important, but paralysis by analysis can be just as dangerous as carelessness. Sarah realized that Rodriguez was right. In trying to avoid repeating her previous mistake, she was creating new problems by overthinking every decision. Finding the right balance between caution and confidence became another part of her training. The breakthrough came during the 6th week of the program. Sarah was participating in a complex scenario that required her to provide precision fire support for a simulated hostage rescue operation. The shooting positions were challenging, with targets at ranges from 200 to 800 yards and strict requirements to avoid hitting the hostage figures mixed in with the targets. As Sarah settled into her first firing position, she felt the familiar calm that came when everything clicked into place. Her breathing was controlled, her sight picture was perfect, and her mind was completely focused on the task ahead. When the exercise began, she moved through the course of fire with fluid precision, engaging targets rapidly while maintaining perfect accuracy. "Outstanding work, Martinez," came the radio call from the exercise controller. "All targets eliminated, no collateral damage." Sarah felt a surge of pride and confidence that she hadn't experienced since before her sniper school failure. She had performed flawlessly under pressure, demonstrating both technical skill and tactical judgment. Most importantly, she had trusted her abilities rather than being paralyzed by fear of making mistakes. The final exercise was a comprehensive test that combined all aspects of her training. Sarah had to plan and execute a solo mission to gather intelligence on a high-value target, then provide precision fire support for the target's capture. The scenario was designed to test decision-making, fieldcraft, and marksmanship skills under realistic stress. Sarah spent hours planning her approach, studying satellite images and weather forecasts to identify the best infiltration route and shooting positions. She checked and rechecked her equipment, but with the careful efficiency she had developed rather than the anxious repetition of her earlier training. The mission began at dawn with a 12-mile infiltration through mountainous terrain. Sarah had to avoid multiple checkpoints while carrying 60 pounds of equipment to her observation post. The physical challenge was significant, but she paced herself carefully and arrived at her destination with energy to spare. From her concealed position, Sarah spent 6 hours gathering detailed intelligence on the target compound. She documented patrol patterns, identified key personnel, and selected multiple shooting positions for the eventual assault. Her observations were thorough and professional, demonstrating the patience and attention to detail required for this type of mission. When the assault phase began, Sarah provided precision fire support with devastating effectiveness. She eliminated 3 high-priority targets at ranges exceeding 600 yards while the assault team moved through the compound. Her shooting was so accurate that the exercise controllers had to verify her target identifications before confirming the hits. "Mission complete," came the radio call from the assault team leader. "All objectives secured, no friendly casualties." Sarah felt a wave of satisfaction as she began packing her equipment for the extraction. She had performed flawlessly throughout the entire exercise, demonstrating mastery of every skill required for her new role. More importantly, she had proven to herself that her sniper school failure had not defined her capabilities as a marksman or a soldier. The graduation ceremony was small, but meaningful. Colonel Williams presented certificates to the 4 soldiers who had completed the program, including Sarah and 3 others who had started the training with her. Rodriguez delivered the keynote address, emphasizing the responsibility that came with their specialized skills. "You are now among the elite marksmen of the United States military," Rodriguez told the graduates. "This achievement brings both privilege and responsibility. You will be called upon to make decisions that can mean the difference between mission success and failure, between life and death. Never forget that your skills exist to protect those who cannot protect themselves." After the ceremony, Williams pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "I want you to know how impressed I am with your progress," Williams said. "You've demonstrated exceptional skill and determination throughout this training. Your sniper school experience, rather than being a liability, has made you a stronger and more thoughtful soldier." Sarah thanked Williams for the opportunity and for believing in her potential despite her previous setback. As she prepared to begin her new assignment, she felt a sense of closure regarding her sniper school failure and excitement about the opportunities ahead. That evening, Sarah called her grandfather to share the news of her graduation. Roberto's pride was evident in his voice as she described her successful completion of the program. "I knew you would find your way, Nieta," he said warmly. "The warrior's path is never straight, but those who persist reach their destination." "I feel like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be," Sarah replied. "This unit values the same things you taught me: precision, patience, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect others." As Sarah settled into her new role, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The failure at sniper school had been devastating at the time, but it had ultimately led her to an opportunity that was even better suited to her skills and personality. She had learned that setbacks could be stepping stones rather than roadblocks, and that persistence in pursuing excellence was more important than avoiding failure. Her first operational assignment was just weeks away, and Sarah felt ready to prove that she belonged among the elite marksmen of the military. The little girl who had practiced shooting tin cans on her grandfather's ranch had grown into a highly trained professional, tempered by failure and strengthened by the determination to rise again. 2 years after completing her specialized training, Sarah Martinez had established herself as one of the premier marksmen in her National Guard unit. She had participated in 17 missions across 3 different theaters of operation, consistently performing with the precision and professionalism that had become her trademark. Her reputation for reliability under pressure had earned respect throughout the special operations community. But nothing had prepared her for the mission that would define her legacy. The call came on a Tuesday evening while Sarah was conducting routine training at the unit's Colorado facility. Colonel Williams summoned her to the operations center for an urgent briefing on what was classified as a time-sensitive target mission. "We have a situation developing in eastern Syria," Williams explained, pointing to a satellite image displayed on the main screen. "High-value target has been located in a compound approximately 40 kilometers from the Iraqi border. Intelligence indicates he's planning to move within the next 72 hours. Sarah studied the imagery, noting the challenging terrain and the distance between potential shooting positions and the target area. The compound was situated on elevated ground with clear fields of fire in all directions, making a close approach extremely difficult. "What's the mission profile?" Sarah asked, already calculating potential solutions in her mind. "Direct action is not feasible due to the target security measures and the political sensitivities of operating in that area," Williams replied. "We need a precision elimination from maximum standoff distance to minimize collateral damage and reduce the risk of international complications." Master Sergeant Rodriguez pulled up additional imagery showing potential shooting positions on ridgelines surrounding the target area. The distances were staggering. The closest viable position was over 2,800 meters from the compound. "That's nearly 3 kilometers, Rodriguez said grimly, beyond the effective range of most sniper systems. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she realized the magnitude of what was being asked. A shot at that distance would require perfect conditions, flawless execution, and more than a little luck. It was the kind of shot that existed mostly in theory, discussed in advanced ballistics courses, but rarely attempted in real-world conditions. "What's the current record for a confirmed long-range elimination?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "The longest confirmed sniper kill is 3,540 meters, achieved by Canadian Special Forces sniper in Iraq," Williams replied. But that was under ideal conditions with extensive preparation time and multiple spotters. Sarah studied the mission parameters more carefully. The target would only be exposed for brief periods as he moved between buildings within the compound. Environmental conditions were challenging, with variable winds and temperature fluctuations that would affect bullet trajectory over such an extreme distance. Most importantly, there would be only one opportunity. If the first shot missed, the target would immediately seek cover and the mission would fail. "I'll need a specialized weapon system," Sarah said after several minutes of analysis. "The standard sniper rifles won't have sufficient range or precision for this shot." Rodriguez nodded, having reached the same conclusion. "We have access to the CHATAC M200 intervention system. 408 CHATAC caliber, effective range out to 3,000 meters under optimal conditions." Sarah was familiar with the weapon system, having trained on it during advanced courses. The M200 was a specialized long-range rifle designed specifically for extreme distance shooting. Its powerful cartridge and precision barrel could deliver exceptional accuracy at ranges where conventional sniper rifles became ineffective. "What about support assets?" Sarah asked, knowing that a shot of this magnitude would require extensive planning and coordination. "You'll have a three-man team," Williams explained. "Rodriguez as your spotter, Specialist Chun for communications and security, and Corporal Bradley for ballistic computation and environmental monitoring." Sarah was pleased with the team selection. Rodriguez was one of the most experienced spotters in the military, with an uncanny ability to read wind conditions and environmental factors. Chun had proven herself reliable during previous missions, and Bradley was a former artillery officer with exceptional mathematical skills. The team had 48 hours to plan and execute the mission. Sarah spent the first 12 hours studying every available piece of intelligence on the target area, memorizing the terrain features, and identifying potential complications. She practiced with the M200 system on ranges out to 2,000 meters, pushing the weapon to its limits and familiarizing herself with its unique characteristics. The ballistic calculations were staggering in their complexity. At 2,800 meters, the bullet would be in flight for nearly 4 seconds, during which time gravity would pull it down almost 20 feet from its initial trajectory. Wind effects would be magnified exponentially, with even a slight breeze capable of pushing the bullet several feet off course. Atmospheric pressure, humidity, and temperature would all affect the bullet's flight path in ways that required precise measurement and calculation. "The margin for error is essentially zero," Bradley explained as he reviewed his calculations for the 100th time. "Any deviation in wind speed, atmospheric pressure, or target movement will result in a miss." Sarah nodded, understanding the enormity of the challenge ahead. But rather than feeling overwhelmed, she experienced the same focused calm that had carried her through her darkest moments at sniper school and beyond. This was what she had trained for her entire career, the ultimate test of skill, preparation, and mental toughness. The team inserted into Syria under cover of darkness, traveling by helicopter to a landing zone 20 kilometers from their target. They moved through mountainous terrain for 6 hours, carrying over 100 pounds of specialized equipment to their chosen shooting position. The hide site was located on a rocky ridgeline that provided excellent concealment and a clear line of sight to the target compound. Sarah and Rodriguez spent an hour constructing a natural blind that would hide them from observation while allowing an unobstructed view of their target area. As dawn approached, the team began their final preparations. Bradley established a portable weather station to monitor atmospheric conditions, while Chun set up communications equipment and prepared to coordinate with overhead surveillance assets. Sarah and Rodriguez began the painstaking process of precisely ranging the target and calculating the ballistic solution. Range to target, 2,847 meters, Rodriguez announced after multiple measurements with laser rangefinders. Wind speed variable from 3 to 7 miles per hour, direction varying from northwest to north-northwest. Temperature rising from 68 to anticipated 75 degrees by target window. Bradley input the data into his ballistic computer, running multiple calculations to account for the changing environmental conditions. The complexity of the shot required him to prepare solutions for several different scenarios, depending on exactly when the target appeared. Based on current conditions, you'll need to hold approximately 18 feet high and 4 feet left of center, Bradley announced. But those calculations will change if wind or temperature shift significantly. Sarah settled behind the M200, adjusting the bipod and checking her sight picture for what felt like the thousandth time. The rifle felt solid and familiar in her hands, despite the enormity of the shot she was about to attempt. Through the powerful scope, she could clearly see the compound buildings and the small courtyard where intelligence indicated the target would appear. Hours passed as they waited for the target to show himself. Sarah remained perfectly still, controlling her breathing and maintaining her sight picture while monitoring radio communications for updates on the target's location. The mental discipline required was immense. Any lapse in concentration could result in mission failure. Target emerging from the main building, came the radio call from the overhead surveillance aircraft. Moving toward the vehicle in the courtyard, Sarah could see the figure through her scope, a distant silhouette moving between the buildings. At this range, the target appeared impossibly small, no larger than a pinhead, through even the most powerful optic. Sarah had to trust her training and the ballistic calculations as she placed her crosshairs where Bradley had directed. Wind steady at 5 miles per hour from the northwest, Rodriguez whispered. Range confirmed at 2,847 meters. You are clear to engage when ready. Sarah took a deep breath and began her shooting sequence. She had rehearsed this moment thousands of times in training, but never under conditions this challenging or with stakes this high. Her finger found the trigger as she refined her sight picture, placing her aim point precisely where the ballistic calculations indicated. The target paused in the courtyard, providing the stationary shot that Sarah needed. She controlled her breathing, took up the trigger slack, and began applying steady pressure to the rear. Time seemed to slow as she focused entirely on sight alignment and trigger control, blocking out everything else in the world except the shot she was about to take. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding mountains. Sarah maintained her sight picture, watching through the scope as the heavy .408 caliber bullet began its 4-second journey across nearly 3 kilometers of Syrian desert. For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. The target remained standing in the courtyard, apparently unaware of the incoming projectile. Sarah began to wonder if she had missed, if all her calculations and preparation had been for nothing. Then the bullet arrived. The target dropped instantly, struck with devastating precision despite the incredible distance. Sarah felt a surge of disbelief mixed with professional satisfaction as Rodriguez confirmed the hit through his spotting scope. Target down, Rodriguez announced calmly into his radio. Clean hit at 2,847 meters. Mission accomplished. The surveillance aircraft confirmed the elimination and provided security overwatch as the team prepared to extract from their position. As Sarah packed the M200 rifle, she realized that she had just achieved something extraordinary, not just completing an extremely difficult mission, but setting a new record for long-range precision shooting. Do you realize what you just did? Bradley asked as they prepared to move out. That was the second longest confirmed sniper kill in military history, and the longest ever achieved by a woman. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and humility as she considered the magnitude of her achievement. The shot represented the culmination of years of training, dedication, and perseverance through failure. From the little girl practicing on her grandfather's ranch to the sniper school dropout to the elite marksman she had become, every step of the journey had led to this moment. The extraction went smoothly, and within 12 hours the team was back at their home base in Colorado. Word of the record-setting shot spread quickly through the special operations community, earning Sarah recognition from the highest levels of military leadership. Colonel Williams called her into his office the day after their return. "Martinez, what you accomplished out there was extraordinary," he said, holding a message from the Pentagon. "This shot is being classified at the highest levels, but I want you to know that your achievement will be remembered as one of the most impressive feats of marksmanship in military history." Sarah thanked Williams for his support and leadership, but her thoughts were already turning to her grandfather back in Texas. That evening, she called Roberto to share news of her success, though she could only speak in general terms about a successful mission. "I can hear something different in your voice, Nieta," Roberto said perceptively. "You sound like someone who has found exactly what they were looking for." "I think I have, abuelo," Sarah replied. "All those lessons you taught me about patience, precision, and perseverance, they all came together when it mattered most." As Sarah settled into her quarters that night, She reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The devastating failure at sniper school had seemed like the end of her dreams at the time, but it had actually been the beginning of something even greater. She had learned that setbacks could become setups for comebacks, and that true strength came not from avoiding failure, but from rising stronger after falling down. The tin can with the bullet hole sat on her desk, a reminder of where her journey had begun. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to serve, but tonight Sarah Martinez could rest in the knowledge that she had proven herself among the elite marksmen of the world. The little girl who had dreamed of being something special had grown into a woman who had achieved something truly extraordinary, setting a record that would stand as testament to the power of persistence and the refusal to let failure define one's destiny.